There's a lot of blue going on here. Well, in our previous video, we reviewed James Cameron's True Lies on 4K. And now we're going to get into my personal favorite James Cameron film, the director's cut of The Abyss. Prior to its theatrical run, James Cameron's almost 3-hour underwater drama sci-fi action thriller opus was taken from him by Fox. They stripped it down to just a bare-bones 2-hour and 20-minute film. And 32 minutes of the film was just cut out, including entire scenes that gave the film much more context and depth, character development, and character motivations, including important dialogue. Strong emotional beats were missing. Most importantly, the alien plot points that were spread throughout the original cut of the film were completely cut out or shortened, including an entire sequence explain why the aliens are even there in the first place, and also a scene where the aliens are threatening to wipe out humans with a 1,000-foot tidal wave, leaving many viewers, after seeing the theatrical cut, with a lot of unanswered questions, and the film just felt very empty, which is why one of the reasons the film ended up ultimately bombing. And actually, actor Todd Gaff, that starred in the film, sums it up really nicely here of how the audience felt with the theatrical cut.
It seems like you're in a completely different movie for the last chunk of it. When did it become E.T.? What happened? You know, we were in a tight little claustrophobic suspense thriller.
So yeah, this director's cut, or dubbed as the special edition, is not just some cash grab from a studio throwing in a couple extra minutes of footage here and there that adds absolutely nothing to the film. No, these are scenes that significantly improve the film, and this is why I am always trying to convince anyone who has only seen the theatrical cut to please give the director's cut a chance. It actually feels like a full movie. And it has only been available on 3 home media mediums, which was Laserdisc, VHS, and this 2000 DVD with multiple reissues over the next 10 years. However, the problem is they all carried the same dated, now I believe 33-year-old scan, which really does hinder the film because all we had was a non-anamorphic image. When you play a non-anamorphic movie on your 4K 16:9 TV, this is how it looks. Yeah, the image is just trapped in a small box in the center of your screen. And this is why so many of us fans have eagerly been waiting every year, I believe for the past 15 years, for the Blu-ray release. Well, this is it, guys. On March 12th, 2024, we finally have The Abyss, not just on a remastered Blu-ray, but on 4K UHD that includes both cuts of the film. Alright, so let's jump into our wetsuits, deep dive into The Abyss, and take a closer look at the 4K release and how it compares to the previous DVD. Now, is The Abyss a perfect 4K presentation? No, it's not. Yes, there are problems with the transfer, which I'll get into soon. Now, I first want to get into the color reproduction. Now, with the film finally being restored with much more appropriate colors, using aqua, some greenish tones, steely cold blues, and when needed, heavy blue tones. And what this has done is draw out a wealth of information now in the image. The aqua blue tint used for the underwater environment gives a much more realistic look of being underwater now. The DVD carried a very faded, dull-looking image that was void of life or energy. The 4K brings the film back to life with energetic colors, and the use of HDR10 and Dolby Vision on the 4K UHD disc really opens up the color gamut, drawing out rich colors such as yellows, we have splashes of reds, and oranges especially are deeper and bright. That looks great underwater. We also have outstanding neutral colors within the oil rig. Skin tones look very natural and healthy and lifelike. As for the skin textures, I'll be getting into that in my detail section of this review. Now, a highlight is the neon electric glow from the alien pods that is toned down some, yet still carries a very nice glow, and when it reflects off the helmets, it looks fantastic. The colors look much more natural and outstanding without any of the colors being pushed too hard throughout the presentation. Saturation is increased. That helps give some really nice life back into the image. I will say though, I did notice from time to time saturation is pushed just a little too far, but it's definitely not a deal breaker, and I think if you're not looking for it, you're probably not going to notice it. Overall, the saturation keeps the image and colors looking how they should. Contrast is also brought in, and this especially helps with the darker underwater scenes. Black levels and shadows are spectacular and stronger with truer, deeper, inky blacks and richer shadows. There are two scenes especially that stood out to me, and that are great examples here of the shadow detail. One is when Coffee catches Hippie spying on him. I mean, just look at the shadow that casts on Coffee's face compared to what we had before on the SD Master. And the other example is when Bud is sneaking up on Coffee in the pool room. The shadow of Bud casts off against a wall in the distance. It just looks so detailed. It looks fantastic. The DVD, outside of some brighter black levels here and there, was pretty decent. But it's nowhere near as good as this. A great reference point with the black levels is at the very opening of the film with the naval submarine sequence. On the DVD, it just looked very murky and muddy, especially with exterior shots, engulfing a lot of detail. Especially when the sub hits the ocean wall, exterior shots of the sub just looked like a mess, and you just couldn't really see clearly what was going on, what was happening in the darkness and the murkiness. Later on, with the searching of the sub sequence, had the same problems. Now with the 4K, those same sequences look significantly better with the better resolved blacks and shadows that really draws out so much more information along with better contrast use. We can now clearly make out all the damage, all the debris on the exterior of the sub within the murky waters, and inside the sub as the crew searches for survivors. All the interiors of the sub are with the mix between the accurate color grading and the improved black levels, and it's perfect. It leads to a much more visible and detailed image. And now we've come to the area that has been the most controversial, had the most contention with this 4K release, and that is just the overall image quality itself. The Abyss is definitely not as bad as True Lies, but there is still some obvious sharpening done that in certain areas was pushed a little too far. More noticeably is with skin textures and close-ups. You can even see this on eye lines with close-ups that look a bit processed, and also certain shots and scenes do carry a bit of an overly processed look. It's not throughout the film. It is only pinpointed to certain scenes, and even then sharpening was not pushed too far out where skin textures, close-ups, or details look waxy or the image looks unnatural, unlike some shots with True Lies. In fact, there is some excellent depth and three-dimensionality here with the 4K that was severely lacking on the DVD or just the SD Master in general, that gives the image a much more lifelike quality and some real sense of spaciousness. However, my curiosity really laid within the late 80s effects, the model work, composite shots, and the rare use of early CG. Now, first of all, the effects and model and composite shots of the actors within the miniatures always looked a little dodgy at times, which is to be expected for a 35-year-old film. And while they do hold up pretty well, still under the higher resolution, it is more noticeable, but it also isn't a deal breaker at all. The best part is with the rare CG effects work with the liquid tentacle that the aliens use to communicate with the crew that goes through the oil rig. That holds up surprisingly well, along with some of the, puppeteer work that was used for the aliens. Holds up very, very well and doesn't look like it's a puppeteer work or animatronic or however they utilized it for the aliens. However, a very impressive area is with all the underwater photography, and I was constantly impressed with how realistic and lifelike it all looks. And this is just something we never had before on home media. Other details are sharp and clear, from facial features, clothing textures. The image just carries so much more details now than we ever saw before on any previous home media release. But now we're going to talk about the grain field. The Abyss was shot on Super 35mm and blown up to 70mm for its theatrical run. And this 4K transfer just does not look like a film that was shot photochemically in 1988 and then released in theaters in 89. And this is the area that's really going to frustrate many viewers, is the lack of that filmic grain. Obviously, grain management was used to clean up the grain field. So yes, some areas do look soft or overly processed because of it. However, make no mistake, the grain field is not 100% gone. The image still carries a very fine layer of grain that is noticeable depending on the shot, that does give a somewhat filmic appearance, but honestly it's not by much. But the result is not a waxy mess or disaster by any means. It does not look anything remotely close to the disastrous T2 4K UHD physical disc. So in the end, even with its dated effects, the lack of organic grain, and some moments of the film looking a little overly processed, the Abyss in 4K is still miles away and extraordinarily better looking than the old SD transfer such as we have with the DVD. This 4K is a very refreshing, detailed, and naturally effective 4K UHD presentation. Alright, now we're going to dive into the audio presentation of The Abyss on 4K, and The Abyss also, just like for True Lies, gets a new demo-worthy aggressive Dolby Atmos track. And the Dolby Atmos track was sourced from the original theatrical 6 track, and it explodes with life and energy. Sound effects are just extraordinary, even from the little sounds of bubbles rippling out of regulators, to the roar of the hurricane, to the crane sequence that sounds outstanding, and the mini sub-fight near the end. This is a fully engaged and aggressive mix, with plenty of activity rolling through the surrounds, rears, and overheads. Dialogue is clean and clear, and I even heard some little off-screen dialogue from time to time in the surrounds. Alright, so my score for James Cameron's 4K UHD presentation of The Abyss, I'm giving the video a 4.5 out of a 5. Much better than True Lies, and definitely head over heels better than what we had before. As for the audio, I'm giving it a 5 out of a 5. So yeah, guys, after such a long wait for a new transfer of The Abyss, we finally have it on 4K UHD and the remastered Blu-ray that's included. And finally, I can toss this DVD and put it where it belongs. And stay tuned, because next up, I will be uploading Aliens 4K UHD, and we're going to compare it to the previously released Blu-ray. So keep an eye out for that. As always, guys, keep physical media alive, and we'll see you next time with Aliens on 4K.